Eating fat is a necessary part of a healthy living. Carbohydrates, protein, and fat together give us a complete energy reserve for not only immediate use, medium use, but also long-term storage. There are different types of fat, and this video we will go through, and I will tell you my recommendations of what you should use for which category. First, some basics. Fat has two broad categories. They are all made up of triglycerides, which is in turn made up of glycerol plus 3 fatty acid chains. The way the chemical bonds within the fatty acid chain is structured will decide what kind of fat it is. So if all the bonds are saturated, it's called saturated fat. If they are not, it's called unsaturated fat. Within the unsaturated fat, then there is a monounsaturated, there's polyunsaturated, and there's the trans fat. So let me tell you now how we're going to go about deciphering all the different kinds. My top choice on a day-to-day basis is omega-3. Now, omega-3 is part of the polyunsaturated fat family. You can find it in flaxseed, walnut. You can find it in wild salmon, not necessarily the farm salmon, because the omega-3 is wonderful in anti-inflammation. It provides EPA and DHA, and those chemicals come from algae, which the wild salmon feed on. As you may not know, the farm salmon feed on corn, not on algae, okay? So omega-3 is wonderful, and you can is essential, okay? And you get it from the wild salmon and nuts and flaxseed, for example. So that's number one. Number two is actually olive oil. Olive oil is a part of the monounsaturated family. It is anti-inflammatory and is essential together with other oils. It is problematic in the sense that most people kind of misuse it. Olive oil is wonderful in the sense that it can be used for salad. It is liquid and it is easy to use. So it's very easy to convert the olive oil into something that is not good for your body. So you can use it on olive oil for salads. Okay, that's what you do. That's number two. Number three is actually avocado oil. It's also a monounsaturated fat, but because of its high temperature, you can use it for cooking and you can use it for salad as well. So that's number three. Number four is actually saturated fat. Okay, we've had a long struggle with saturated fat in the sense that we've been told that saturated fat is not good for us because of previous researches. But we now know that there's actually two types of saturated fat. One is called even chain saturated fat, which comes from meat, which is neutral in cardiovascular effect. And there is a odd chain saturated fat, which comes from dairy products, which is actually anti-inflammatory. Now, saturated fats have no double bonds in their structure. They are linear and they are liquid. And they are solid at the room temperature, and then when they they can found in the eggs, they can be found in the butter, whole fatty beef, for example, pork, is what I'm saying, and whole milk. So there are many sources of saturated fat. You should not shy away. Okay, and the current recommendation from the government is that we should only take a small amount of saturated fat, but many of the advanced researchers in lipid actually that does not necessarily agree. I think if you stay with a good balance, you should not be too afraid of saturated fat. So that's number four. Number five is actually omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 is used in vegetable oil, fried foods, salad dressings, and too much is not good. The proper ratio between C3, omega-3, and omega-6 should be 1:4, but American diet, because of the fried food, is using about 1:16. Omega-6 is necessary, just like omega-3, but it is pro-inflammatory, so you don't want to have too much. So further down the line is medium chain triglyceride. Remember, we said that most of the fat, in fact, all the fat is made out of triglyceride. And there are small chains or short chains, there are long chains, but the medium chains that come from coconut is easy to metabolize. They're about 10 to 14 carbons long. They are good for good energy, and it's easy to break down. But the problem with this is that it's usually focused on the liver. So triglyceride in the liver can lead to insulin resistance as well as fatty liver if it's too much. So if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, you have to make sure, and you need to check your triglyceride to make sure it's not too high. And of course, the last and the worst is the trans fat. And the trans fat is things like margarine. There's natural and there's artificial ones, but the artificial ones are the worst. They increase LDL, they cause endothelial damage, and they reduce HDL. The good news is that in US, the government has almost eliminated the use of trans fat, although you have to be careful on your label, because even though it says 0 trans fat, 0%, it can still contain 0 to 0.4% as a rounding down acceptable measure. So look at the ingredients and make sure there's no hydrogenation fat. So overall, in summary, the best omega-3. Number 2, olive oil. Number 3, avocado oil. Number 4, saturated fat. Number 5 will be the omega-6. And then number 6 will be the medium chain triglyceride. And number 7 will be the trans fat. So I think if you follow some of the guidelines, okay, use olive oil for salad, use avocado oil for any frying or deep frying, okay? Don't shy away from saturated fat from meat or dairy products. You can use some coconut oil for instant energy if you have no triglyceride problems, okay? It's okay to take some fried food in terms of omega-6, but don't overdo it. But you do have to avoid the margarine. So if you keep along these baselines, I think you have good health.